counterweights. Are you saying?
Counterweights was inflated.
Counterweights was huge. It was huge.
Yeah,
okay.
60,000 pounds.
Wow.
Big ones.
All right, got the thumbs up from the clerk. We will call the Courts and Public Safety Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. Morse?
Here.
Mr. Hardy? Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Beggs?
Here. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from March 9th, 2023 meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Mr.
Walker.
Morris supports. Mr. Walker, or Mr. Morris approves. Mr. Walker supports. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. All right, that is minutes are approved. Any changes to the agenda? I'd like to make one. The discussion item stated says consider to repair generator and the UPS in the sheriff's department. That's actually, the generator was repaired last year. That information was just for reference, so our discussion today will be just for that UPS. Any other changes to the agenda? With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So
Mr. Erickson approves.
Support Walker.
Mr. Walker supports. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Moving on. Public comment. Any public comment for courts and public safety? All right. Well, let's move into sheriff or undersheriff are not here. Something may have come up. I don't know. Anyway, consideration of police service contracts with Grant Township, the Village of Hesperia, and the Village of Walkerville. I know at our last meeting we had a number of questions, and I did receive a copy of a response for those, so I guess in lieu of those guys not being here, I guess I'll read that.
I'll message them.
Thank you.
I was just sending him an email.
Is there a easy way for me to maybe print this out real quick so we can disseminate this to the board members? Or email it to you to print out?
What was in the packet?
No, this wasn't in the packet. It's
Okay.
just a memo with some of the cost breakdowns and some of the other answers to our questions that we had from our last meeting.
Okay, yeah, you can email it to me.
Okay.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
I think it's interesting that the person that asked the questions, being the chairman of the board, wasn't copied. That one they sent it to another board member, so he had time to look at it.
Yeah, I just received this yesterday.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning.
Here he is.
Sheriff, we're just starting the conversation about the contracts for Hesperia, Grant Township, and Walkerville. I just sent Ms. Byard the email that I received from Under Sheriff Schiller with answers to some of those questions.
I know he's got copies of them burned for everyone, and he's tied up at the front desk, but he's on his way.
Understood. That happens.
Why don't we? What else do we have on this? Just the sheriff's standing there. Why don't we skip to the one on extradition or under the generator and see if we get that information and come back to it before we close your session?
I think that's reasonable. I think we can discuss this before we wrap up whether the undersheriff makes it or not. But we'll yeah, let's do that. So let's jump to the extradition discussion, if that's approved by a head nod from
Yeah.
commissioners?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. So let's talk about, so we've got Ms. Byard, consideration of budget amendment for the proposed extradition. Shift gears.
Yeah, so there is a letter that is provided in your packet from the prosecutor. He's asking to extradite, and they don't have the funds in their budget to do so. So they are requesting a budget amendment for the purpose of extradition to their budget.
Mr. Begg?
Yes.
May I ask the sheriff a couple questions? on that?
Absolutely.
Sheriff, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of confused on something, and, boy, on a lot of things. But on this, the prosecuting attorney is asking us to amend his budget for $3,500. I'm all in favor of bringing a person on a crime like this back from another state. I'm 100% in favor. But the investigation was done by the Michigan Department of State Police, and they're holding the warrants. If your department holds a warrant for somebody out of state, how do you get them back?
We would enter this felony warrant, contact the appropriate police agency, have him picked up on the warrant, and then we would contact a transport company. We would contact several transport companies, trying to find the most economical resource. Usually $1,500 ish, maybe $2,000 for a long run. But we've got a folder with transport companies. We start calling the list, see who's close, or who's available, who's cheapest, and cheapest always wins our bid. So
That's why I'm curious.
I don't
Why is
understand.
the prosecutor's office involved with this?
So if we have a situation like this, the prosecutor is aware of the situation that, say, the subject is in custody in Florida and that we're making arrangements to pick him up. We take care of it. I don't know why the prosecutor's office is involved in this.
Which, if you were to do that in that scenario, what budget does that come out of? Do you,
Out of the sheriff's department.
Sheriff's department budget.
We pull it out of a line item and
Sure.
find what's appropriate, and
Just-
but then we would have a supplement report onto the situation, request restitution from the
Yep.
individual.
Yep.
When it goes through court.
See, I always thought if there was a warrant, it was the responsibility of the agency holding the warrant to bring the person before the court.
Well, I've never seen the prosecutor go and get anybody.
That's where I'm coming from.
It's always the police agency. Either, I've went to Vermont myself. We've sent guys several times to area states, to local Midwestern states. But when it's farther than that, we contact them. If we can do it, if we can send 2 guys in a car, have a quick overnight and run back, we do that. It's easy. But if it's California, if it's Florida or something, if it's going to be a week-long trip, we just call a transport company. It's a piece of cake.
And is the reason that we haven't had this situation before where he actually prosecuted somebody from another state? Where the prosecuting attorney didn't get somebody from another state?
We've done it several times, Phil. We do it a couple times a year.
What's different about this?
Well, it's MSP, so I'm speaking out of turn. I'm whatever MSP's got going on, I'm not aware of. I don't know why they haven't contacted. I know at Electric Forest, when we have dozens of people from out of state, MSP makes arrangements for them to come in.
We did start it this week.
I can tell you this, because I made the arrest. The village of Rothbury went down to Indiana and brought somebody back, because we were holding the warrant from the Electric Forest, and I made the original one. And we didn't get paid from the prosecutor.
So if I may, Mr.
Yep.
Walker, are you saying that really this should be MSP taking care of this then? In your opinion?
In my opinion, it's the responsibility of the agency holding the warrant,
Which is MSP?
which is MSP.
It would be interesting to speak to one of the brass from the state police post.
Mr. Baker?
Yep.
I'm in favor of approving this, because I don't want to see the victim you know, held hostage over, you know, something here. But I think we need to go back to the question of the prosecuting attorney is, why isn't the agency holding us doing it?
I'm sure Lieutenant Forner would take a phone call right now if you
Yes,
wish.
and when I read, you know, they only ask for these capital offenses. You know, we're only talking about first-degree murder, first-degree criminal sexual conduct. You know, this isn't your, and they've got the person. I believe you're right. I believe in order to expedite this, if there's another way to pay for it, great. But if this is sitting on our prosecutor's desk, I recognize the names involved. I think the sooner this is taken care of, the better.
Would it be appropriate to make a motion to approve it?
Contingent?
Contingent upon disapproval from MSP to cover the costs or something like that?
So moved.
So, I think that it's an interesting, I would agree, I wanna see this dealt with. I like to see criminals prosecuted, especially in crimes like this. So.
But even, what Mr. Erickson just brought up to us, did they only do it on Part 1 crimes? We do it on more than Part 1
Right.
crimes. You know, like I said, I've done it myself, you know, with the electric force incident.
But not felons that are criminal sexual conduct?
No, it's not limited to only felonies, the Part 1 crimes and murder, you know,
Yeah, the one in Vermont, that was a breaking and entering. You know, that I went out after,
Yep.
drove to Vermont to get. So we've done it for much less than, you know.
Yeah, great, B&E, but
think
this
I-
is different.
Right, this is pretty heavy duty.
This is nasty.
Mr. Big, I think we need to handle it.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, just need to have what's going on here.
Yeah, perhaps it'd be appropriate in our motion to stipulate that some quotes be, a little bit of shopping be done for this project as well. And maybe MSP is at the driver's wheel and they have a company that they wanna deal with.
On a different case that was going on with MSP on an embezzlement from a major industry, MSP didn't know why this discussion was being held about that, because they said, we have people in our department that we do that stuff.
Right.
And also, this is very stale, 2016 to 2023, 7 years.
Yep.
I think we're late.
Oh, we can only act on it when it's
When
brought
it
to our
comes in front of
attention.
us, but
Yeah.
I think we've done a disservice to the victim.
I would not feel comfortable with this board saying no to this. You
Right.
know,
Yep.
At all, and us being the ones to make the decision, we were not bringing back a perpetrator of a crime like this.
Do you feel the caveat in the motion is appropriate?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Any other discussion on this item? Very good. Let's come back around to the contracts. Police service contract discussion. Under Sheriff Schiller and Sheriff Mast, if you wanna.
Let's share that information with them. So, this is really the response, our response from some of the questions from a couple weeks ago. So the contract that we've proposed is the same contract that we've got from the law firm.
Holstover and Toski, yeah.
Right. I'm gonna need to write that down a couple times before I remember that.
Corporate counsel.
Corporate counsel, right, there you go, corporate counsel. So it is their draft proposal that we're working from.
reactions come to mind as you digest that?
Only a statement that it would have been nice to have it, you know, this letter is from April 4th, and it would have been nice to have it, so we would have had the opportunity to look at it ahead of time.
I think there's a breakdown in the chain of custody of that somewhere that we're not sure where that happened, so.
So on the 4th, did you email this out to people, or?
I think I sent to Tracy on the 4th, yes.
Okay, did you receive that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't see it.
I did not see it. I was asking the questions, and I didn't see it.
The 4th?
You had this before?
I printed it before it was just handed to us.
Really?
Yeah, I've got it.
My apology, I did receive it. And I thought you were forwarding that on to the commissioners.
Oh.
We had my apologies.
Okay, there it is.
There was the break.
Yep.
No, the questions and conversations in the last board meeting clearly warranted a response and answers that I felt were, you know, appropriate to be able to address to you. So this group could make an informed decision, you know, with the right information.
Well, my main concern was that, if I may, Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
My main concern was that our expenses were covered, and it sure looks like that. I'm not looking to make this a cash cow. A little extra, not for a cash cow, but just a little extra is good, and it's there. I mean, even for the top, yeah. So, I'm comfortable with the $65 an hour. That was my concern.
So there is an extra of $4.62, you know, per hour. The mileage rate charge out is a minimum of what, 60 cents a mile? How do you figure that it's covered if you even go with the mileage rate, let alone all of the equipment and everything else that are provided?
So you're talking about .2 there regarding vehicle mileage. We will not be charging them.
Yes. Because just to drive from Hesperia from Hart and back, you're burning up that amount of money for the whole 4 hours. I'm not gonna cut, you know, thin lines on this anymore.
Well, I would argue that if a deputy is doing this before a shift, after a shift, their patrol area is the county, so they would either begin that overtime in the area, near the area. There's already gonna be presence in the area. Now, it may not always happen that way. It may be they're driving from the office to Hesperia, to Grant, to Walkerville. But those are also areas that they're going to be covering during their normal patrol as well. So there's going to be vicinity involved for any of those situations. We don't have township cars. It's not going to be a Golden Township deputy that's then driving to Hesperia to pull, you know, to cover this time. So, you know, where do you, if you were tracking those miles for travel, where do you start the clock?
I get it. One of our deputies lives in Muskegon County and the other one lives in Mason County. Do they have take-home cars that they take to Muskegon and Mason County?
Yes.
So I guess we belabored it enough. I guess we can.
Mr. Erickson.
I think what it will do, irregardless of how we look at it, it will give both of those villages a police presence that's been agreed to. that they can count on, that they'll be billed for. So I think for both of those small communities that are having a terrible time out there with law enforcement, with enforcement of laws, I think it's important that we support Walkerville and Hesperia as best we can and go even further to make certain that we've got a law presence over there. I mean, it's different. It's not Stony Lake. It's not Pentwater. We're talking about a pretty rough crowd.
Well, and the one unique thing about these three jurisdictions in particular is whether they're, and I don't know the village of Walkerville or townships or the village of Hesperia. I don't know if their taxpayers are paying a law enforcement millage, but their tax dollars have been paying for law enforcement of one form or another, and at this time those entities aren't able to provide that service, and so this is an avenue for those entities to provide the services that they've promised their citizens. And
Mr. Begg, that's not really true with Grant Township. Grant Township had a working agreement for 27 years until this was proposed with the village of Rothbury.
Excuse me, I'd have to disagree with that. This was only proposed when it was asked for us by Grant
Agreed.
Township.
Agreed.
We didn't step in and try to
Well,
step
it-
on anybody's toes. I know that's been portrayed, but that's not the case.
Well, Rothbury's was in effect at that time that this was proposed.
I don't know that their
was.
contract was still current.
It was current.
Okay.
So,
But just to clarify, you guys didn't reach out to Grant Township. Grant Township reached out to you guys, correct?
Absolutely. That's not my business to reach out to try to do that.
well, I'm just saying there wasn't an option for that.
Grant Township, and I know the supervisor would be happy to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
But Grant Township supervisor reached out to us.
Okay.
Mr. Erickson.
And also, I must add, though, Rothbury is a whole lot different than these two other villages we're speaking of. Rothbury, has Jack and Jill. Rothbury has a tax base. Rothbury has a department. Walkerville does not have a department, nor does Hesperia, and Hesperia's been unable to secure a police chief just because of a budgetary issue at the cost of finding a chief.
No, Walkerville does have a department. It's just
They do.
really small.
But it's just unmanned.
It's almost there in name only, but
It's a car.
Yeah.
Right. There's a car parked in a garage out there, but it
Yep.
hasn't seen daylight in a long time.
Yep, exactly.
And the village would like to see more, we had a deputy made a traffic stop on what turned to be a near sovereign citizen yesterday. Two tasers were deployed right in Walkerville, right next to the school.
Yep.
This was just off general patrol.
Yep.
We made an arrest on him. The principal of school was out there with their deputy during the incident. They're just asking for a little bit more presence to keep the wolves at bay.
Yeah, and my wife Stacia taught and was administration in Walkerville, and I know enough about what goes on in the halls of that high school and how much they did depend on officers' presence in the halls even. We've got to show that presence out there, and when we start busting tasers out because we're chasing trucks down the street that are selling meth, we've got to get a lid on this sooner rather than later.
I might be mistaken on this, but I think the last bank robbery in Oceanaconia was in Walkerville.
I think you're right. Yep. Yep.
Or was it Pentwater?
Pardon me?
Or
There was
it-
one in New Era before.
Yeah, there was New Era, there was one in Pentwater,
Okay.
but you're right, Walkerville's been held up as well.
Mhm.
The Walkerville Quick Mart has been broken into several times.
And now with $2 stores, that is a hub of activity. I cannot tell you how busy between the Quick Mart and $2 stores, that village has changed.
Mm.
When you couldn't go grocery shopping in Walkerville for about 10 years, I think, since Knowles closed, it's a hub.
Well,
It's busy.
I think the bottom line is more police coverage is not a bad thing, no matter how we look at it.
Right.
More police coverage is not, in your comment about Rothbury, Rothbury's the largest municipality in the, whoever thought it would be. But after the annexation of Double J Ranch, it's the largest municipality in Oceana County, because they added 5 square miles.
With handsome income annually.
Well, you take Double J Ranch and all of the, and Ed is sitting here, Double J Ranch and all of those all of the condominiums and everything that they pay taxes on there. It's probably one of the larger taxpayers in the county.
And it can brag the largest police presence in West Michigan during the electric forest. But Hesperia and Walkerville are different than Rothbury, so.
Yeah, well,
And they're begging for some
They're
assistance.
begging for help.
Mr. Beggs, this goes until January 1st. So there's a sunset on it.
Yeah.
For January 1st, so
Yep, which I think is reasonable.
I think it's reasonable with the sunset on it.
Any other discussion on these 3 contracts?
I'll be here if you do.
All right, very good. But don't, well, this may be for undersheriff. Next conversation is about the UPS in the basement there. Uninterruptible power source. All right, spit it out this time.
Good morning.
Morning.
I sent a proposal for replacement hardware, and I was gone for a week a few weeks ago, and then when I returned, I kind of got back on this and tried to get some installation costs, because that's a part of this equation that I don't have an answer to today even. I kind of hoped maybe if this was later in the week we might be in a different spot, but we're not. So I reached out to C&I Electric, and their quoter was gone the week I got back, and so I don't have a number for removal and installation. I also reached out to a local vendor down in Shelby, and to be truthful, I do not know if this company does that type of work. I almost think that they do. It's the same company that Mr. Maloney reached out to get a quote for generator backup at the CSB. And the name of it leaves me right. They're on Industrial Park.
Energy Solutions, something or other.
Yeah, right in Shelby on Industrial Park Drive. So I've reached out to both the C&I and our local company here to see to try and get numbers for removal and installation. I forwarded it to you because I do think it is something that we want to address sooner than later. And a couple of weeks ago I had concerns, so I'll proceed however you'd like me to, honestly.
Yes.
Mr. Begg, I know Blackmer did the generators and the transfer switches and stuff for the ambulance force. They may not be interested, they may be too
Yeah,
busy.
they certainly are probably capable, I would think, but I know their workload is significant, and they're, yeah.
Mr. Begg, for me, I'm willing to support this. Maybe we need to increase the volume on this for the amount of money, so Undersheriff Scheller can just get it done. And I would suggest that when we start our budget process in just a few months, that the Undersheriff Scheller gets prices to replace the antique that they have for a generator in the next budget cycle, because maybe the Historical Society would like to put that on
Right.
display someplace.
A practical, a usable display.
I do think it's time
Yeah.
for us to budget and do the generator.
Well,
bill.
I
Yes.
$3,200 for a radiator.
Mm-hmm.
That was a year ago.
No,
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I just, we need to be careful about some of this stuff.
So that was,
I researched that myself, and that was
That's-
legitimate.
yeah,
But that's, yeah.
Mhm.
and hence the cost. It's at some point you get to a place where just replacement probably does make more sense. We were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard spot when that occurred, and it needed to be fixed.
So in terms of the removal and installation of the UPS, again, I'm happy to proceed however you'd like me to. I can reach out to Blackmer as well. Right now I have reached out to 2 different companies to see. I know for certain that CNI is recommended by Eaton for the installation of their product. I don't know if that, how much weight that carries, but
What do you think is a reasonable fee that would cover the cost? Just give an idea. How much was the switch itself? 1,400, was it?
No,
8,000,
86,
8,000, yeah,
30,
almost
86,
9,000.
yeah. 86,
So-
5 grand,
Pardon me?
5,000. I don't.
I-
It's really, it's a labor cost, right?
It needs to be done this way. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to expedite.
No,
this.
I understand.
Just
Not-
get it done.
I wondered, has your brother looked at it yet?
No.
No, but the city is part of this equation. If
Yeah.
we're without without city power, this is where this conversation begins.
Correct.
And Mike knows it. Michael Schiller is a very knowledgeable electrician.
I certainly can ask him to come by and take a look at it and give me an idea.
Do we have any other services in Hart that are running on generators without power?
The medical care, Dave's Party Store has a really large backup generator.
It's important right there, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some other.
Yeah, probably
Other
Cherry
places.
Blossom, probably a few of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's important to have that.
Yeah, Cherry Hill has a big generator.
Yeah.
somehow.
Now they do now. Yeah.
Hanson's?
I think Dave's got one. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I mean, I would suspect if you were asking me to ballpark, I would say $4 grand installation is
Okay, that's
not. I mean,
4 or 5. Yeah.
I'm-
it could be more than that, I suppose, but
I am willing to support that. You know, if it's more than that. you
we
know, with-
if we make a motion for 13,000, you know, that gives us
It's gotta be done.
$4,400.
It's gotta be done, so let's just. We
And
can't-
I apologize. I wish I had hard numbers for us to be able to make a more informed decision on this morning, but
And let me just say, I understand how difficult it is to get numbers.
yeah. Well, right now that seems to be a challenge.
It's very, very difficult.
It is.
Mr. Banks?
Yes.
So, Tracy, or Ms. Byer, where would this come out of? That it would be out of which funds?
Contingency.
Contingency, how much is in there?
50,000.
Okay. So we have a cushion in there, I mean, for something like this. I mean, it needs to be done anyway, so we
Sure.
have to find it.
And I'm sure that whoever you have do it, you'll be in a discussion within a year. Hopefully, we can replace the generator so they'll know that we're.
Yeah,
they have
absolutely.
to attend new generator.
So, and also just you know, a side note maybe, I talk very regularly with Amy, and so all of the servers now, even for the courthouse, are now down in that one server room, and so our servers have independent, really small UPSs on them as well, which has calmed my nerves a bit, honestly. And she just got done doing a lot of that server work, so so not all of them is that the case for, but for our newest hardware that she has installed, they do have independent ones, so there is some redundancy there, which is a good thing for us. So redundancy is super important, especially in some of the stuff that we deal with. So.
Any other discussion? Marvelous. Thank you, Sheriff Schiller. Let's see. I believe that brings us to any other department head report from anybody that you want to talk more, or
I can answer more questions if you have any more.
Any questions for the sheriff, undersheriff?
Yesterday, we were at 45 in the jail. As far as numbers wise, there's a lot of coming and going, a lot of intakes and comings and goings out of the jail, so we're busy. Road guys are busy. We're having a lot of training going on. We've got some driving training going on today.
Did you find any more road deputies?
So we've got one under, he's being trained right now, so he's riding along with Deputy Jeremy Swihart. We've got Justin Ilbrink is started on the road. He's the one that came from Menominee. We've got another young man that's been working in the jail who's he's gonna go through MPOL's retread training. He was previously certified. He's gonna be recertified. That's a couple-week process, but we're letting Justin Ilbrink get a little bit further through the field training portion of it before the next young guy will be coming out. So
how many openings does that leave us with right now?
we have one.
And that's a road deputy opening?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's progress.
It is.
Anything else for department heads? Very good. That brings us to public comment. Any public comment for courts and public safety? Hearing none, we'll adjourn that meeting and convene here shortly once our technology's ready. Anybody need a break? All set? Well, in Commissioner Hardy's absence, you get to hear from me a lot today. So with that, we will call the Finance Committee, Finance and Administration to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Erickson.
Here.
Mr. Morse.
Here.
Mr. Walker.
Here.
Mr. Hardy. Mr. Beggs.
Here. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the March 9th, 2023 meeting.
I'll make that motion, Morse.
Mr. Morris makes a motion.
Support Walker.
Bob Walker gives support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Very good. Any changes to the agenda?
Yes, if you would. Reversal of the, I asked that this be put after the inspector's adjustment, and it will be the reversal of the discount on the building permit fees for Shelby Acres.
Okay. Any other changes to the agenda? All right. With that, we'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So move, Walker.
Mr. Walker makes a motion.
Support.
Mr. Erickson supports. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Very good. Public comment for Finance and Administration. Quiet group today. All right. Mr. DeVries, consideration of the 2022 equalization report and approval to sign the L4024 and L4037.
Thank you. It's Vandervries.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I apologize.
I get a lot of DeVries. So it's very and I'm pleased to announce I do have hard numbers. So we're balanced with the state. Basically, I've got.
What's your license plate, Ed?
This is
Okay, thank you.
I see a lean file inbound.
Okay, so what
So, this is our equalization meeting, which that's why you have the meeting on this Tuesday. Pretty much all of the counties are holding their meetings today because this is the statutory date. Some counties may not have their report ready, so they actually still meet on this day, and then they just go into recess, and then conclude their equalization meeting later. Our report is complete, so we can finalize this today. Does everybody have the report that was emailed out? I'm just going to talk about it, but if you want to follow along, I think the important information is on the page 1 of 22, the increase in SEV and taxable values by year. This is a really unique year since Proposal A started in 1994. If you look at some of the years back 2001 through 2008, we had increases in our taxable value that were similar to our increase in taxable value this year. It went up 7.71%. But what is unique about this year is that if you look at the CPI increases in those years, the CPI was below 5%. So the taxable value was capped at that CPI. And so even though the taxable value increases were greater than the CPI, those typically would have caused millage rollbacks because the revenue was tied to the CPI. So your revenue could only go up at that CPI increase. So even though in those years where it was going up 6, 7, 8%, you were really only going up 1.5%, 2.3%. The biggest increase was 4.4%, but that year our taxable value actually went up 0.5%. So what's unique about this year is our actual inflation rate was 7.9%. But because of Proposal A, the taxable value was capped at the 5% increase. So everybody's taxable values, if there was not a transfer of ownership and no new construction, went up 5%. What's different about this year is that the Headley millage rollbacks still use the 7.9%. So not only did our taxable value increase go up 7.71%, it's below the 7.9% inflation rate, which means there's not going to be a rollback. I haven't run the numbers yet, but I do not believe anybody will have a rollback, which means you're actually going to see a 7.71% increase in your revenue from last year, which is huge. It's going to be probably the biggest increase year over year since 1994. Our actual assessed values went up just over $300 million in assessed value, which means the true cash values of the county went up about $600 million year over year, which is one of the bigger increases. And actually looking at it, we had a 23% increase in the assessments from 2016 to 17, but we had less than 1% increase in the taxable value. So the assessments went way up, but your revenue went up about 1%, maybe a little bit more. This year, again, we had a 15.5% increase in assessed values over last year, and then the 7.71% increase in the taxable value. Majority of that was on our residential sales, our residential properties, which are strictly based on sales, which is really the best method for changes to assessment because it's sales driven. It's the market. And if anybody's looked at housing prices, people just have been buying and paying a lot more than what properties have been assessed for. So, and that's how our residential sales study works, is it's comparing the sales that occurred between April 1st of 2020 through March 31st of 2022. So it was that 2-year window when things were really screaming as we came out of the pandemic or in the pandemic. Not really seeing much of a change or a slowdown. We're seeing a slowdown in the number of sales that have occurred toward the end of last year, but we are not seeing a big drop in the amount of what people are paying over the assessed value. And that's, I believe, mostly driven by the fact that the inventory, the number of houses that are available is still much lower than it typically is. So there's more buyers than there are sellers. And so they're still driving the price up. Something comes on the market, if it's priced, even if they price it low, and I've got some friends that are realtors, and they say they deliberately price it low because they know they're going to get 5 or 6 people coming in and then bidding it up. So it's kind of a new tactic that has really taken off, at least over the last several years. The increase was about 13.5% for residential overall. Our commercial industrial came down a little bit, but what was interesting is the personal property was increased to make up that extra couple percent. And so I'm not sure exactly where that's coming from. If companies didn't apply for some of the small taxpayer exemptions, because I expected personal property to actually go down this year, because they changed the law that allowed for the exemption. It went from 80,000 up to 180,000. So, and with the EMPP on industrial equipment, they don't pay any ad valorem tax. They pay about a 2 mil tax directly to the state. So I don't know if we had an increase due to somebody failing to file, and it might come back through a July board change and bring that down. So we kind of got to watch that to see if there's any big adjustments to the taxable value. But the taxable value year over year went up about $6 million. So we're not talking about a huge amount when we're talking about a $300 million increase in assessment. And for personal property, the assessment is the same as the taxable value in most cases. So even if there is some adjustments, it'll be minor. So you're still looking at a pretty healthy increase in your revenue year over year. So does anybody have any questions?
Is there a way, and I don't know if I'm going to ask this question the right way, is there a way that you determine new construction and how much new construction has increased tax income?
I can tell you what that amount is, but how it's determined is up to the local assessors.
I'm just wondering. That's what I want to know, is just what the amount is. How much of this tax increase in taxable value is based on new construction?
Actually, some of the forms that I included.
Are they in here?
Well, I just need to show you how you can tell what's new construction, because if you look at the back pages, the L4022s that each of the local assessors provided. So there's 17 of them, one for each township and one for Hart City. But if you look at that form, and you can look at the new column unit by unit. And so, like, I'm looking at Grant Township. Grant Township had
what page number is that?
Well, they're not paged. They're in order alphabetically once you get back to the appendixes. I would say it's probably back in the 70s. And they look like this. So they're showing previous year. They show a loss, the adjustment, and the adjustment is the adjustment to just due to market value, and adjustment also when property's uncapped, that's an adjustment to the taxable value that would be used in the Headley rollbacks. Losses and new are not, so with the new construction. But so there was 1.5 million in losses in Grant Township, but there was 3 million of new construction, or new to the roll. Now, new to the roll could be several things. It could be new construction. It could also be a veteran that got the exemption last year. Maybe they either passed away or they sold their house. That would be new back to the roll because it's coming from exempt back on. It could also be that on this report, because the veteran or a poverty exemption, they can apply to the March board and it would be included in this report. But if they didn't apply to March, then you're seeing a new to the roll that may disappear if they go to the July or December board, and then it zeroes that property back out. So again, those adjustments will affect our ending taxable value and assessed value for poverty and veterans exemptions. But you can look unit by unit, and I think I can run a report if you'd like to see it, where I total up all of the new. But the other thing that would be new is, let's say that an assessor had something classified agriculture, and then they changed it to residential, that would be a loss to the agricultural class, and it would be new to the residential. So when properties change class, and so a lot of these losses may not be actually a loss where you demolished a building or something. Most of the losses there are either in personal property, because the value's depreciated, or they were class changes from one class to another.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I'm probably gonna hold you and talk to you about that more.
Okay.
Because I'd love to learn more about that. So
Sure.
Thanks.
What I can do is I can run basically a county-wide 22. So it would take all 17 units, put them on one paper, and then you could actually see the total amount of loss and total amount of new.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions?
Ed, do you have any idea, excuse me, do you have any idea the total SEV that is forgiven for veterans in Oceana County?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but that is a report that we can run.
And the reason I ask that is there's been so much move in Lansing on changing that. And
Yeah.
doing it, you know, and whether it's ever gonna happen politically, I don't know.
I think you're going to see something change this year because there was 2 court decisions, MTT case, and then it went to the appeals court and they upheld that, where they basically, and with all the assessing units I do, we had about 35 surviving spouses of veterans that fell into this, new decision, whereas they determined that the surviving spouse only gets to retain the veterans exemption for the deceased veteran if they stay in that house that the veteran was on the deed and lived in. So they had to not only live there, but they had to be on that deed. And if the surviving spouse, which a lot of cases they move closer to family, so we've had several people move into the area that have been getting the surviving spouse exemption for probably 7-8 years, we had to deny them this year. And it came as a shock to them, obviously. So there is some pending, some bills that are going through either the House or the Senate right now that is going to clarify that to allow a surviving spouse to relocate if they buy a new home in Michigan after their spouse has passed away that would have qualified for the exemption, to continue getting the exemption. But there's also bills have been reintroduced that came up, I think in 21, to try to move the veterans exemption completely off from the property tax and make it a income tax credit, which would be much fairer to the local units. One of the townships I do is Laketon Township, just north of Muskegon. They have 89 veterans, and we had 5 of the surviving spouses that didn't qualify, so it dropped it to about 84. But 84, and I know their decrease in assessed and taxable value runs in the, I think it's up around 4 or 5 million in assessed and taxable value. I mean, there's several that the veterans live in lakefront homes on Lake Michigan, so some expensive property in many cases. Not that they shouldn't get it. The way they're doing the way the law reads, they're eligible for it. So it's not my decision to say they shouldn't get it.
And there was one bill that did not get signed, that passed and did not get signed, to put a cap.
Correct, and the governor vetoed that.
And the governor vetoed it.
Yeah.
150,000 or 200,000, I thought it was.
I think that sounds about right. I think that was directly in relationship to some of the veterans that in Petoskey, Traverse City, along the lakefront up there, that were in $2 million, $3 million homes.
We have some too.
Yeah. But I can run a veterans report and can tell you what that impact would be if there was not a veterans exemption, if it was removed, how much would come back on the roll, and I can also let you know if it stays in place, how much revenue is actually being lost to the veterans exemption by all the jurisdictions.
Thank you. So we're over We're over $2 billion for the first time.
That's correct, yes.
I never thought my signature would be worth $2 billion.
Yeah, me either. I would like to mention our equalization clerk technician, Lori Hoxton, is here. She is retiring at the end of the month. She is going to stay on kind of part-time to help fill in when we have people go on vacation or are sick. But I also have here, and I'm just meeting her for the first time, I've talked to her on the phone, but Julie Jackson is starting this Friday, and she is going to be Lori's replacement here down in the equalization department. So I just wanted to introduce them and thank Lori for her 2 years being here, and she's done a great job, and I'm sure Julie will be trained well in the next 2 weeks, and will continue doing a great job. So if you need anything from equalization, you'll be dealing with Julie at the end of the month. Lori will be here if Julie's on vacation. So.
She's far too young to retire.
That's what I told her. That's why I'm keeping her part-time. She's still got some good work left.
You do need them to sign all of these,
Oh, I
correct?
do, yes, yeah. And those,
There's several of them.
I just need a copy of them. Those are the ones that you send to each of the clerks. I think
Okay.
whatever it says on the bottom, I think it says where they're supposed to be sent.
Okay.
Yes.
What is the best way to get a hold of them? Email, phone?
Either. I have one phone number, it's in my pocket,
Okay.
and my email. If you email the county email, it forwards to my Hotmail.
Okay.
So it's either evanderreese at the Oceana or evanderreese at Hotmail.
Okay.
So either way's good.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll try to get back to you as quick as I can.
Great.
Anything else? Very good.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
sir. Appreciate it. All right. Ms. Anderson, consideration of reappointment of Mr. John Wins to the jury board.
So the jury board is made up of 3 individuals, and they have 6-year terms, and they're rotating terms. So every 2 years we reappoint somebody, and you have to get the judges, the circuit judges' approval for that. So I've contacted Judge Nagowski on March 6th, and I got a response back from her that she approves the appointment.
Okay. Any discussion?
John Wines, Shelby boy.
Wines, said his name
good,
wrong.
Good Shelby boy, good family. We had 3 boys go through Scouts with John. John's made a lot of Eagle Scouts in his scouting career. Good person.
Marvelous. All right. Anything else? Perfect. Judge Lambrix, we have a court space discussion
Yes.
continued.
Good morning, thank you everyone.
Morning.
Basically, I assume everybody's kind of seen the preliminary proposal. What we're asking to do is convert the library space in its entirety to allow us to use that as a new jury room. I've talked to Brian about that. I've also met with Sheriff Mast and also with Tracy. And a couple things. I think it's an optimal use of the existing space that we have in the building. As we all know, we have very limited space in this building for any adjustments. But Brian's familiar with that because he's the one that put in that wall when the library was in its entirety. That was separated out into an office a couple of years ago. So he put in that wall, he knows what's in there, and he's comfortable with doing that. The cost is projected to be, I thought, quite low at $3,000 because Brian is able to do the work. One of the things that I think that was brought to my attention is the issue of public safety. I've talked with Sheriff Mast, I met with Tracy, and during the pandemic, when we used the boardroom, we would come through that corner. What I'm proposing is to just simply have the jury come along the east wall of the courtroom, exit this door right into the jury room. We would have a bailiff right there that would be able to assist that, so it's really safe. In terms of the bathroom use, then they can use the bathroom out on that corner, and the deputy can walk to that corner. He can keep an eye on the person in the restroom and an eye on the jury room. There's really no safety issue at that point. I talked to Sheriff Mass, and he can address that too. Are you comfortable with that?
Absolutely, yep.
So, in addition to that, one of the things that we discussed was whether or not that change or proposal would require additional deputies. It won't. They still have one bailiff, so we're not going to be taxing the Sheriff's Department with additional personnel. One person, like Mr. Gregor, can still do that function. This board has had a history. I've been in the county building for almost 35 years, and one of the things that I've always been proud of is that the board and the courts have always had a history of public accommodation. This is a public building, that's why we're here, to help serve the public. And I think allowing us to convert that to a jury space will not only give some convenience, but it also gives us use it for different functions, such as probate judge, I'm chairman of the election commission, so we have to meet to review all the election ballots and such. We have also the canvas board that meets, juvenile court, so that room can be used as a secondary room, which we need. This room is used a lot. Sometimes it's conflicts with other people's schedules, so I think that additional room would be good. One of the things that Tracy had brought up is a different option, and the option that she had mentioned, and I don't know to what extent you discussed it, Tracy, but I just want the board to know that we talked about it.
Sure.
And one of the thoughts that Tracy had was to have the FOC director, Bill Cummings, move into this part of the library. There's quite a few problems with that. The first problem is that it removes Bill as the director from being right across the hall from most of the staff. If we were moving Kevin down to where the current jury room is, now we have the friend of the court director, the enforcement officer, and all the staff all right next to each other. If Bill were to move down here, then he's separate and distinct from his staff, and I really don't think that makes a good practice. The other concern is basically there's a problem with facilitating that building-wise. Like I said, I've been around a while. I'm going to pass this picture around. This is a picture of what used to be in Bill's office. In Bill's office, right at the corner, used to be a toilet. Well, there's about a 2-foot by 5-foot, I don't know what you call it, cubby hole. It's kind of like where they carved out an area for this sink. That area from the current jury room extends into Bill's office, and as far as I know and can tell and remember, the plumbing from what used to be the toilet and everything is all in that wall. Brian's really concerned about what that's going to do to once he gets in there, because otherwise what happens is you lose that space. You can't have a room. You have to have a room that comes, you know, not in a straight configuration. So you're going to lose a lot of space by doing that. So in terms of the cost, I didn't get a specific number, but if we were to do that, we still then have to put a mini split of about $5,000 into that office for Kevin. If we convert that back to the former library space and use that for a jury room, then the current heating and cooling unit in there handles that, and we don't have that expense. So those are some of the things that after the last meeting, I met with Brian, I met with Tracy, met with the sheriff, and I think that's a reasonable approach. Paul, at the last meeting you asked me if that was needed. It really is. If any of you wanted to go down and take a look and try to get 14 people in that room, I'd be happy to take you down there. It's just not conducive, and especially in consideration while, you know, now we're looking at the last 2 years of COVID. I know we're moving forward, but there are still health concerns that we should be aware of. We should try to have as much space as we can for those type of meetings. So I'm just asking the board for consideration of that. I think that it's a reasonable use of the space. It's a minimal cost for the space, and I think it would be a good benefit to the service to our community to have that space. So, and one nice thing about it is that Brian's the one that put that wall up. So in terms of taking it down and adjusting that, he thought that would be, he could get started on that quite quickly, and thought that would be a good way to go. He really is, and you can talk to him as well, but he really is hesitant to tie into that wall where all the plumbing and things works, because he doesn't know what's in there. And I don't know if you can see that picture where the ladder was. It comes out about 20, almost 2 feet, and then it goes 5 feet over to the wall. So if you're going to use that space, you have to account for that 5 feet, and I'm not sure the board or Brian wants to tackle that. So that's what my thoughts are. Any other thoughts or questions that any of you have?
I'm just following the chess game. So
okay.
Jury, remove the wall. Jury room moves over here. You said something about Kevin moving
into the current jury room.
Okay. And then the law library going.
The law library just would be the one wall, the separation wall that's in there now.
Yep.
Would be taken out, and that space right there would be the new jury room.
Yep.
Okay.
Law library would stay there?
Yes, because we can put
so
those books along the wall.
Sure.
And then the 18 to 20 inch table on the west wall, that would stay. We can use that for coffee, lunch, whatever.
Sure.
And so we'd have the table basically in the center, still be able to use the law library on this side, and the bench would stay on this side.
Is there any statutory issue? My understanding, when we had the law library discussion, it needs to be available. What if we have a jury trial that renders really the law library unavailable? Is there any issue there? You know, say we have it's unusual, but a jury in here for a week. And
no, that has changed. We also can make, we want to keep certain books. Some of the books are outdated, and so we're going to get rid of some of those. Some of the older books are also kept in the copier room, and so we want to, I've already gone through a list and determined what we can keep and what not to keep. We've also talked to the supplier for our updates and such about that. But to answer your question, if anybody has a need for that, we can make electronically available, and with everything being online, we can be in compliance that way.
Sure.
So there is no issue to what you talked about.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know.
All right.
And
and I think you covered my big concern from the last discussion was that security.
Yep.
And what you say, and the sheriff concurred. You know, a deputy's able to keep an eye on two birds at once.
Sure.
Sure. Because I didn't want to see a setup where we need now 2 brown uniforms.
Absolutely.
In a department that's already spread pretty thin. So,
absolutely. And when we use this room, that's what we did. The deputy would stand right at that corner, and he could see ingress and egress both from the bathroom, and he's not entitled to be in the jury room, but he has to be observing the exits, and so he can do that.
Sure.
And I just want to confirm that's we looked at that, and you're good with that.
We looked at it, we walked through it, and we had Deputy Gregory was a part of that conversation. My original concern was the bathrooms, but when I had that concern, I didn't realize we were going to be able to access these bathrooms right down the hall and make this much more doable. So since we're using those bathrooms, bringing those in play, then it's a much easier situation for us to secure.
And using those bathrooms is a relatively minimal inconvenience in the sense that typically when those are used, it's when we have jury deliberation. If the juries haven't been sequestered for deliberation, like on a lunch break, they can use the other public restroom that we have.
Oh, sure.
But if they're kind of locked down and they're in the deliberations, let's say from 2 in the afternoon till 3:30 or 5, then we have to have them confined, and that's when we would primarily use those rooms. So the actual function or use wouldn't be that great, but when we do need it, we have the security available to do it.
Sure. And the actual courtroom is right here, right?
Yeah, right on the other side. So if you were to go in there, the jury is on this wall. So what would happen is when they ingress and egress, they'd simply come along that wall, along the back wall, and exit right out this door. You know, and I've always had a little bit of concern where the way it's set up, it's just the way it was designed years ago. But you have a jury, and you walk them right in front of the defendant, and they're all walking like this, they don't want to look at them, and they're all looking at the jury to see what are you trying to decide, and I've noticed that when we use that exit right there, it's just straight out behind and out the door. And so, the other thing I think you should be aware of, I would be a little bit uncomfortable using the bathroom as a juror where there's 12 or 14 people in there. You have that small room and the 2 bathrooms there, and just with, you know, general health and etiquette concerns, if people have some stomach issues or some other issues, I mean, you know, I don't know how to politely say it, but
Everybody's aware.
Everybody's aware. Thank you. Everybody's
like
aware.
in the airplane, in the back of the airplane, you don't want to be by the bathroom.
Deer camp.
Yeah.
So, but we're giving this a lot of thought. I think it's an effective use of the space that we do have. And so if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any other questions, discussion?
Thank you.
Okay. If you need anything else on this issue, let me know. I'd be happy to address it at a full board if necessary.
All right,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Administrator Byard, consideration of the Economic Alliance proposal.
So the proposal has been provided for you from Curtis. He talked about this during his presentation. They're requesting $30,000 for 2023. I believe it was
30, 20, 10.
30, 20, and 10. So 20 for next year and then 10 for the following year. And he has laid that out in his proposal. And I don't know if there's...
Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Morris, maybe you can tell us what that $30,000 is going to be used for. It doesn't say anything in the letter what it's going to be used for.
Yeah, sure. So it's the budget is about $111,000, and that includes for the entire OCEA, and that includes his pay, his benefits, a little bit of feed for the right place. I don't remember the exact, maybe $11,000, something like that, to be a part of that group. That's essentially what it covers. It covers his salary and his in the right place.
The additional 30,000 covers that?
The entire 110,000 covers that. The entire budget covers that. So this will help us reach that $110,000. Does that answer your question?
Are you saying that the original amount in the budget was $80,000?
No, for the last 2 years. So when when the model was redone to have an executive director, you know, before Jody was 60% here, and that's why it was like an $80,000 budget.
Sure.
She didn't have any fundraising capacity or anything like that. She was purely just helping, you know, build economic development, which is good. Well, we changed the model in 2022 to be an executive director position model, where it's a full-time position, and he's doing the economic development work as well as some fundraising in partnership with the board members. So right now we've you know, the county funds $845,000 of that $110,000 per year, and then we have to fundraise for the rest of it to be able to pay for his salary.
The administration costs.
And the administration costs.
Yeah.
So that'll bring us up to $75,000, and then he's going to raise funds for the additional.
Correct. And you know, the idea is to get to a point where it's all coming from, you know, except for the 45 from the county, the rest of it is coming from businesses, townships, villages, you know, municipalities, that they see the work is so valuable that they want to invest in it themselves. And admittedly, last year we went nowhere with that, and there's reasons for that, and I think it has a lot to do with the staff that we had, and the staff is different this year, and he's a rock star, and really feel it's super important that, you know, he knows that there's funds in there that his salary is going to be paid, so that he sticks around. Yeah.
You answered my question, thank you.
Yep.
And I think along with that, with brownfields and the other thing that we're getting involved with, it's gonna also help the fundraising.
Well, you know, I saw Mr. Erickson there at the last MTA meeting, and I think you were at the other one too, the one in January. Like, Mr. Burdette has been a part of, you know, presenting there what we haven't had before to that degree, and he's just really taken the reins and just done a great job at representing economic development well.
Sure.
And there are other grants out there that we're applying for, and hopefully that can help offset, you know, the costs as well. But we just got $10,000. I had my board meeting, the OCA board meeting this morning at 8 o'clock, and we received $10,000 from municipalities and, you know, commitments in the last just couple weeks.
To help with this same drive?
Yep, to help cover that budget.
Gotcha.
Mr. Biggs?
Yeah.
One more question, if I can ask, our administrator, do we have the money, or where are we gonna take it from?
I would think that you would, because the $45,000 is coming from ARPA funds, that you would take those funds from the ARPA.
Probably our motion should state that. What's the feeling of the other board members?
Yeah, I think it should state where it's coming from. I think the idea, it's a short-term commitment that I think falls in line with the rest of that money.
Thank you, Mr. Biggs.
That's my opinion.
I did add that into the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Burdette, do you have any comments on, you walked in at a perfect time, we were just talking about the proposal for the 30, 20, 10, is that right? Those are right numbers. Any words of wisdom to add?
Well, as Commissioner Morris was just saying, we have the 35. Our budget is 110,000. This would bring us to 75 this year. Of that gap in the 35,000, we have private investments of 10,000 right now, either in the bank or committed. So I suspect, and they kind of gave the investment plan to give me the reins to really go after, really understand what they wanted in that presentation as I'm asking folks for more investment. So I suspect we'll get there and be well on our way. And what that'll also do is give us that opportunity to have those companies, those townships, really become a part of the conversation. We've got all the 16 townships and 6 villages in the city, and so, helping be that voice to bring together all the conversations, make sure that we're aware of each other and resources, and be a part of moving things in the right direction. Continuing to.
Yeah,
things are in a great place.
Mr. Biggs?
Yes.
Mr. Morris? You know this is coming. Why don't we do the motion and we're gonna give $20,000 immediately and $10,000 more if needed by the end of the year? So if the other communities come across and when they get contributions to $140,000 for the year, then we've spent 20 of the, we've donated what we. Are you following my chain of thought here?
Yep.
And if you say no, I understand.
Sure.
But it would encourage, if we're going out to the others and they know we have 70,000, of it, does that mean they're gonna give 1,000 instead of what they might normally give?
What's the goal number for this campaign, I'll call it, or what?
Well, meeting the budget for this year is that 110,000.
Yep.
But I think there's some additional programs that we like to add. I mean, right now what we discussed this morning is let's get us to that 110,000.
Sure.
But I think there's more things that we can do along the way once we have that secured, and that's the first piece is that 110.
Okay.
I see what you're saying. We actually talked a little bit about that, maybe like an up to 30,000, up to 20,000, up to 10,000, you know, each year depending on how we do. The only thing is I just see that could get complicated. Like it's got to be tracked then. Somehow it's got to be tracked, and that's okay. Maybe if you know, if we go that route, we can do that. It's just going to be some logistical. Like up to 30,000 by what? October 1st, by November. You know, when is that money raised by? Have to be raised by to not get the 30,000. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what I'm. That's the one thing.
I get it.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it. I'm just putting out an alternative.
Sure.
Just a thought.
Good. Any other comments?
No.
Any from the board? All right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, can I add?
Yes.
So I am going to recuse myself because I am on the OCEA board from voting. Unless you think that there's not a conflict.
I don't think that's a conflict.
I don't think so.
No.
You don't? Oh, okay.
You have nothing personal to gain
I
out
don't.
of Mr.
Right.
Morris, so I do not believe it's a
Oh,
conflict.
well, then I'm comfortable with that. If you're comfortable with that.
But
I think
again,
fair point.
that is a decision that's made by all of the peers, not just one, but personally, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I think it was a fair question, and good idea to just throw it out there. Commissioner Morris, communication plan discussion.
Yeah, so you've seen this a couple times now, and back in January, the board asked to come back with some expense, how much it's going to cost, each one of these items. I'm just going to go right down the list here. The collecting the email addresses, utilizing pocket-sized business cards, I've squashed that. I'm just going to do that myself, and I'm going to have those little, you know, I'm going to create my own. So no worries about that. We're going to hold off for now, unless you want to be involved too, and I can connect you with, you know, how to do that. The new website is in process. Is actually active now. So are the bugs pretty much fixed? Do you think, Ms. Byard?
We are working on those. I know that a couple of you have pointed out a couple things that have needed changes or updates or changes to the calendar, those types of things, and Tim had pointed out several items on the commissioners with regards to the committees, and when we find those, when we see them, Stacy's
They were fixed fast.
yeah,
so.
getting in there and fixing those quickly, and we're working the bugs out, so it's getting there. Yes.
Right. And then so still on that same page, but at the bottom, the subscription sign up on the county website to delineate it between different categories. It's not right now. Right now, you just sign up to receive emails, and maybe for now we just keep it that way. I do see value in, you know, people signing up for particular information that they want to receive if they, you know. But for now, I think we'll just leave it as is. So nothing really to decide yet. The one email list from the county officials, we have talked about that, and nothing was really decided on that. I did ask the clerk, you know, what her email address list was more focused on, and that was minutes and that sort of thing. And for Stacy's admin office, it's more for just any sort of communication. There's really nothing decided on that either. I do see that could get a little bit complicated. Is okay, which list am I on? Am I receiving? Yeah, which list am I on for some people? But so Tracy, if people sign up for the email list that's on the website right now, because that goes to Stacy then, right? That's the admin email list.
Yes.
Okay. So next one, countywide board quarterly e-newsletter. We talked about that, maybe not doing it quarterly, but maybe twice a year. And at the time that Tracy and I were talking about this, we lost, I forget her name, but we lost an admin staff. And now we have Brittany? Brandy?
Yes, Brittany.
And so she's getting onboarded, and eventually it sounds like, Tracy, you're going to put that on her lap if this board approves doing a quarterly or a bi-quarterly or biannual newsletter. Is that correct?
Eventually, yes.
Yeah. So I guess that's the first decision to make here. Is this board in support of doing an online e-newsletter on a 2 times a year basis? And then also the countywide board annual snail mail letter. So an actual newsletter, that people can hold in their hand, and that would be created again by Brittany, and then sent out by us. Now, what would the cost be to that? That was what that would go through Ed's.
I don't know what the cost would be for that, because it may not be a cost. If we're sending it out with Ed's tax bills or the assessments,
Right.
then I'm not sure if there will be additional costs how big it is, how thick it is. If it's a little thicker, then yes, there's going to be an additional cost to those.
So that's something that we need to. Yes, the board doesn't want to make a decision on that until we have the actual cost. So we'll have to. Can you keep working on that? Try
Yep.
to find out what the cost would be.
Certainly.
To get that out. And then the talking points doesn't cost any money. That's something that was requested by Richard Raffaelli, to have a 2 to 3 point. My idea with it was to have 2 to 3 points or 4 points that we send out to all township officials that we have on our list, with talking points at the end of every board meeting. Just very brief, 1 line, so that they can stay updated as to what we're doing.
Don't we send them the minutes at this time?
Yeah, and so my thing about that is, my guess is, totally guess, not everybody reads the minutes, because it's, there's a lot of minutes there. And I know it's on them if they don't read the minutes, I get it. But if we can just have a little blurb that's this big, and all they have to do is look at that, I would be up for it,
Well, I don't think we should be editing our minutes or what we do at a meeting. I think it should be the minutes. I don't think we should change that. I think the entire thing ought to go out.
The tricky part with that is if we summarize what we think was important, but somebody else reads a detail and goes, well, you're trying to pull the wool over our eyes because you drew my attention to these main points, but snuck this one in and it didn't make your summary. Yeah, I could see that getting messy pretty easily. Our attempt is to make it more digestible for them, but we could, if we don't summarize, if we hit what we think are the high points, but somebody else takes issue with something we ignore in the summary, they're gonna say that we're trying to pull the wool over their eyes or hide some action that we're taking. Or
I know what you're saying.
It's that could get tricky.
I mean, what if we just said, these are the high points, like you said, that the board discussed at the end of the meeting, but we encourage you to continue to read the entire minutes. You don't have the link to it.
Yeah.
I think their clerk can pick out what the high points are from our meetings and summarize them. The township clerk, village clerk, the city clerk, if they see something in there, that they think, are points worth pointing out, then it's not on us. I did not state it as well as Mr. Beggs, but that's the same concern that I had with how Mr. Beggs stated that.
Even like a newsletter, then people could almost have that argument with a newsletter.
They could, yep.
All right, and then I mean, it sounds like, I mean, what's your thoughts, Mr., well, do you mind if I ask
Yeah.
Mr. Erickson, or Mr. Erickson, what do you think about that one? The talking points?
It's probably good, but it kind of goes along with what Tim had said. You've got to be very complete and exact and make sure it's totally correct. But our clerk should be able to boil down the most of it. But you know, my concern is who's going to read it. There's 5 people watching us right now, and this was a big deal to have these cameras and have this all done so that people could watch these. And I don't think we're even getting the participation right now that we were told we'd get with these meetings. I don't know about mailing anything out. It sounds cumbersome. I think on tax bills we could put notices on, or you know, visit our website. I just went to our website when we came in this morning, and it immediately wants me to sign up for notices. I think if somebody's concerned, someone's interested, they'll sign up for notices. We keep the website. We don't make a grand thing out of it. We make it accurate, available on one site on our county website, and call it a day.
It sounds like there's a consensus on that, so that's okay. And then the El Toro thing, there are prices on that. El Toro is a platform that sends out texts for very cheap, and then we could send a link to county communications like surveys via this platform. I'm thinking about the number of times that we wanted to get feedback from people in this county, and it's been hard. We haven't had a really good format to do that. So that's where this comes in. This will actually send out text to people in the county, and it will say, hey, fill out this, please fill out this survey on the master plan, or the survey on workforce development, or whatever it is. And maybe the participation rate will be 5%, but 5% of 20, say 15,000 people, that's much better than what we've had. That workforce diversification survey that we just had done, we had almost 500 people. That took a lot of effort, and if we had something like this, had access to that, it was $640. Right? Is that correct, Tracy? It would be $640 per day for 16,000 IP addresses.
Yeah, they collect the IP addresses and they push out notifications to the IP addresses. So if you're in there working on something, you're searching something up, something will pop up saying, please complete this survey for Oceana County or something to that effect.
Hopefully it's a little more appealing than that, but right.
Something to that effect, yeah.
Does El Toro sell that information to other vendors?
I mean, Tracy's the one that talked to them, but I would sure hope not.
I'm thinking no. We don't need this.
If they do, I don't.
It says they do. I mean not sell, but it says they gather IP addresses,
yep.
Physical. I mean that's harvesting, that's gleaning, it's worth something, and maybe it gets stolen.
I can see the value of having it, but I'm just.
Well, there's
wanna make
monkey
sure
survey
it's
too. I mean, you could attach a monkey survey to any one of these questions you've got. And if they're signed up on our email address, then we're not messing with their phone. I hate people using my phone with text. I abhor that. I don't want my phone number mixed up with this stuff.
I'm not totally opposed to this. I think we need to ask, find out if there's any other units of government that have been using it, see if they've had any, negative things that have come back on the gathering of the information.
Mm-hmm.
It's from my standpoint. I can see like what.
I believe Midland is using it.
I can see where Curtis could probably use this, getting surveys out and stuff, if we had an easy way to do that to him. The economic development and the gathering of data, demographics.
Yeah.
But I don't want to sit here and have one person come in and say that, I got this robocall and they said they're representing Oceana County. What's it all about? I don't think any of us want anybody calling us with that.
I mean, so if people are wanting to have a voice, we somehow gotta get it out there, how they can have their voice be heard. You know, and yeah, is it their responsibility to be in the know? Yes, citizens need to, it's their responsibility. But it's also our responsibility to make it accessible and, you know, get it out there. So maybe that one, we table it and, you know, or at least do more research, like's been suggested. And then the tax bill.
Tax bill is a good idea.
Send out newsletters.
So I guess, or you know, some of my thoughts mirror some of what's been said. So we have an updated website that's better, more usable, easier to navigate. We have an opportunity for people to sign up, you know, for these newsletters or notifications. Would it be better to be able to isolate that a little bit if they only want to get, you know, say public meeting announcements, or the minutes from the board meeting, or updates from the clerk, or updates about elections? That might be better to be able to dial that in a little bit, but that requires some administration. So in my own business, we use a system that texts or emails, and I can tell you that the people that like it. The people that don't, if I send out a blast to, and they have the option all the time to opt in, opt out. So they receive a text message, and when they get it, they can opt out at any time. But if I send out a blast to everybody, for 2 days I'm dealing with a dozen to 24 angry people that say, "Why are you texting me? I don't want to get this," you know. But they've received those messages in the past for useful information. But as soon as they deem that not useful, you deal with people that are somewhat upset. And so it's a fine balance there to notify people, but then they quickly turn and decide the notification's annoying. You know, I'll delete email from my email inbox for weeks and weeks and weeks, and finally I'm like, why am I going through the effort of deleting these emails? And I'll just go on an unsubscribe kick, you know. And every piece of email that at one point was important, I'll go through and unsubscribe from it, and then I'll go back to spending weeks of deleting emails, and then I'll just be like, this is dumb, and I'll unsubscribe another batch. So I think making the information readily accessible. If there's, now I'm not a 75-year-old man or woman that in retirement that doesn't have internet, but when I want to know something about an organization or a business, I try and find their website. That's just the first place I go, or a Facebook page. So I think that's kind of the median demographic. That doesn't hit everybody, but I don't know how much more we can do and use our time, resources, and use our finances appropriately to continue to make available information that's already available. So it's a fine balance.
I just want you to know I like your text.
No.
From the business.
Some people do, and some people don't.
I just know, like last year when I was doing my door knocking, campaigning to, you know, be board, you know, on the commission again, I don't know how many people told me they have no idea what we do. They, you know, they don't have any information on us, and part of that's their own issue that they didn't do the pursuing. But yeah. Anyway, so how do we proceed here?
Suggestion, Mr. Beggs?
Floor is yours.
Mr. Moore?
Mm-hmm.
When you bring back the most important one you think we can implement, and we should implement, let's start with one thing at a time.
Okay.
How's that sound for the other two board members? And we'll look at it.
Yeah.
our tax bills are immediately, and they affect every taxpayer. I mean, that's a great place to at least go to our website, sign up for our notices, do all this.
Even if it's a...
Well, and everybody is opening up something they love to receive in the mail.
And if they want to come
Oh,
back.
I want to talk to those guys, that's for sure.
But it's a surefire way to have it in their hand and have it in their life.
So can I make this suggestion? So what if we do the newsletter once Brittany's ready, twice a year, an e-newsletter goes on our website, and then also what Mr. Erickson's talking about, just a little slip of paper in the tax letter that says, hey, if you want to be more informed about county business, here, go to this link and have a QR code where they could just, scan it and sign up to receive emails. Can we start?
And even one thing that just came to mind, something like that, and as well just a list of all the commissioners with the townships they represent and contact information. Then they have a, if they're not a QR code person, they have my phone number. If they're in the Lakeshore townships, if they're not a website person but they want to get a hold of Commissioner Paul Erickson, they have his email or his phone number. Now, that opens us up to answering our phones and a lot of emails, but that's what we're here for.
It's on the website.
It is on the website as well. But at this point, that way people that aren't website people, they have contact information in their hands.
But if they're not website people, they're not QR people, and the people we're talking about that don't have internet savvy have stupid phones, not smartphones. So, we're talking apples and oranges here. They've got to at least get emails, which my 4-year-old mother still does email and Googles. So if she wanted to Google or take a look at what's going on our website, she can go there, but she's not going to QR anything. She's going to read her tax bill. We're going to hit the people that are paying the taxes.
Right. Yeah, I think you use a QR code to point them to the website, and then that contact information for those people that aren't, I think hits the range.
Yeah, there's going to be the 30-year-olds that will use QR code, and then you're going to be the 75-year-olds that won't, and then you tell them, hey, check out our website, you can sign up for emails right there. Like you said, it pops right up anyway.
It's nice.
Yeah,
it comes right up. It's right in your face. Yeah, and it's a nice site. The site looks good. It's coming around very, very nicely. And that's our biggest advantage right now, because we did have an antiquated site. But if Curtis needs more information, the Community Foundation, we're using monkey surveys for almost everything. And if Curtis needs more information, he can have his mailing list of people that are interested sign up through this, and they can get a monkey survey to their email address, of which they're more likely to participate in, because I do when I see something from our Community Foundation or our Economic Alliance or something. I'm apt to open it up, I'm apt to look at the question, I'm apt to do the monkey survey.
But you're on the email list, and that's what we're trying to increase, is the email list.
And our tax bills could have that to sign up. This email could be here on our website. But Curtis has got to build his own database too. We can't do this for everybody. But we can make it available for everyone and let them do it on their own. I'm not a QR person per se. I do it. I've done it. The 30-year-olds, do they care?
Depends on the 30-year-old. But generally speaking, not as much.
If they're a taxpayer, they might.
Yeah.
But if they're not a taxpayer in this county, what do they care?
So let's to move this along. I like Chairman Walker's idea of let's focus on one thing. Maybe we keyed in on that conversation. So if it is an addition in the tax bills, let's talk the equalization, find out what that costs, maybe a sample of what it would look like, and let's talk about that moving forward.
So no on the newsletter right now?
Well, I don't think we still have a staff person in place to do a newsletter. So
she hasn't been on staff for only a few weeks now, and we're still really getting her
Yeah, I'm
that
not
coming
saying
into
right
the-
now, I'm
yeah,
saying
to the
newsletter
accounts
would
payable.
be like July or August, our first one, but, okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Ms. Biard, request to amend, the inspector pay policy motion from the previous meeting.
So at the previous meeting, the board made a motion to change the inspector pay, starting with the new inspector. They get paid 55%, they would receive half of that, when the permit is purchased. I'm asking you to change that from when the permit is purchased to their first inspection. And this is the way Mecosta County does it, and, they've also offered to train our staff on how to use that within the BSNA software.
And the reasoning is because of a limitation of the software, we can make it work by paying on the first inspection.
Yes.
Rather than the application.
Correct.
Just a simple question. They still are gonna be paid the plan review
Yeah.
at upfront.
Yep, and that's still included, that portion is in the motion. I'm just asking for an amendment to just that small piece.
Yep. So in theory, they'd likely get, if there's plan review, there'd be 3 payments: plan review, first inspection, final inspection, or 2 months, 60 days after its deadline though.
And the other thing, the way this is set up is so they get 55% of the permit fees. If there's 3 inspections, that 55% is divided out by the 3 inspections, so they're not getting any more. They're just getting that 55% that was approved by the board.
Yeah.
However, the administrator and the inspection office can work out the fine details. I think it's just wonderful.
Yep.
Get her done.
Yep, agreed. All right, any more discussion on that item? Chairman Walker, you have a,
Thank you, Mr. Beggs.
Yeah.
I'll read, probably everybody has seen this, but I'll read it for the people in the audience. And it was sent to several people this morning, and it came from Mr. Richard Raffaelli, and it says, "Good morning and sorry for the late notice. Upon further reflection, the nonprofit developer has decided to retract the request to reduce the building permits, as we are working on purchasing bulk materials, which will then reduce our cost of building. Can you please add it to the agenda to inform the commissioners?" So I think we need to pass a resolution retracting the 2 resolutions that we passed to reduce the building permit fees. And that's a resolution that I'm in favor of. The new one.
any discussion?
Concur.
Ms. Byard, could you work on language for that?
I
You already
wrote out.
Perfect. So I guess we have a policy that we're in the middle of building for this same discussion. The policy, the goal of the policy is to deal with this question in the future. I'm in favor of continuing with the policy, unless, I mean, Mr. Morris has been working on the policy, but I still think, you know, my position all along has been it's important to have a policy, not a one-off discussion.
I think the policy should be we don't reduce them.
I'm frustrated by the time and energy that's been expended on this conversation just to come back around and remove it.
And I know that I'm only speaking to 5 people that are in the audience, and one of those is probably one of our fellow commissioners who had flight issues making it here. When something like this comes to a board, no matter what board it is, the members of those boards that I have had the pleasure of sitting with before, and I had them on this board, we don't take things like this lightly. there's a lot of thought and there's a lot of grief that go into making these decisions. And it's not easy to make them, but that's part of the game, so nothing else needs to be said on my feelings with it.
I can tell you in my conversations with county administrators, and I've had this conversation with them several times because Clare County used to have to deal with it as well, that many of the administrators say they do not waive fees. They will not waive the fees. Those fees are put in place so that it pays for the office and for those inspectors to do those jobs, and they don't do it. So when I reached out for a policy, I didn't get one because they don't do it.
Mr. Erickson.
In defense of what we did coming up to this, one-off, I understand, but anytime you can put 82 inspections at one driveway, there's a certain, there's a scale that we're using here that if someone's willing to make an investment of that nature in our county, and 82 inspections multiplied by heating and cooling and building, we can't close the door on everything if it makes a difference. Now, fortunately, this developer found their way to reverse that decision that they did not have to do.
Yeah.
So I think we need to also look at something that was very monogamous for this developer to do, is to retract that request. So going forward, I don't think we can lump every project into, you know, because we could have 5 inspections. It could be Benona, it could be Hesperia, it could be Colfax, and it could be Claybanks. Now we got some miles, we've got 4 inspections, we don't have 82 at one driveway.
Well, and that wouldn't fall, at least not in my opinion of what the policy looks like, that wouldn't fall within the parameters of the policy.
A new policy,
yeah.
Yeah.
And the problem with that, respectfully, having been in the business for so long, when you have a tract developer, and I dealt with them down in Muskegon County, I can tell you this, that at the last minute, as soon as they can turn the key in that house, they want their inspections. They don't want to wait for the inspector to do the one they're turning the key with and the one they're going to turn the key with 2 days from now. It takes a trip for every one because they want to move on to the next step. They can't put drywall up or insulate until the rough-in inspection is done, and it is a trip for each one.
Yeah.
You know, and for each building.
But there might be 6 or 8 rough-ins all at once. And
it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. Let's hope Stovall does it.
Well, I furnished the last one, Stovall did, and I can tell you it doesn't happen that way. It doesn't happen for anybody that way. You know, it would be ideal if it could, Paul.
Well, maybe we can work on it, but yeah.
All right, any other discussion on that issue? Ms. Byard, Administrator's review of selected claims for payment and the Administrator's report.
So the claims for payment were distributed to you from Brittany. Apologies for those being delayed because it was due to the meeting being on Tuesday rather than Thursday. Does anybody have any questions as it relates to those claims? Okay, and then I provided the administrator's report. I don't have anything to go off on that, but I did want to point out that the West Central Michigan County Alliance was scheduled to meet on April 24th at the West Shore Community College, and that date has been changed to May 1st. So I need to know if you will be attending on May 1st. Please let me know that. You can send me an email or a text or whatever, so I can get that information off to Fabian. They changed the date due to the conflict with the MEC conference. Okay, and that's all I have.
All right. Let's see. That means it's time. Department head reports. Anybody? Mr. McKean.
I'm not 75 yet, but I'll just take my time getting up there.
I felt that comment too, Kenny.
I love it. Good morning. Good morning, Gary.
Interesting discussions, to say the least. But parks are really, we've got a lot of stuff going on right now. So we got the permit from Eagle for the Gales Pond removal and repair, replacement of the, what would be the East Boardwalk. So that's going to be used with ARPA money. I think the good news is we're actually going to get some money away or back from, because lumber's gone down, we're going to get money back out of that for ARPA to go back into the pot, so to speak. We're in the process right now, working on Black Lake. We've hired a architectural or a landscape architect who presented a really interesting plan to make some major changes to that campground. We have to decide how to go forward with that in our next meeting, but really interesting opportunity to expand that whole area of 100 acres there. Another thing we're working on is the Stony Creek project. So we did get good news from Lansing. The Stony Creek project was approved by the Streams group of Eagle in Lansing, which is remarkable. It took 6 weeks and they had no questions, which was even more remarkable. So today at 2 o'clock we're going to be meeting with our group, our combine, and we're going to be talking about getting the bridge ordered and starting the work schedule on August the 1st. So a lot of good things going on. We're in the process right now of getting ready to start the 32 by 24 shelter at Cedar Point. It's all donated from various people, so no cost to the county whatsoever. And a lot of good things are going on. Parks are being used all the time, more and more. We're seeing replacement now of the part of the boardwalk out at Gales Pond that's been sun bleached, the wood there. And we're replacing that with the Trex material, and Joel Michelson has taken charge of that. And Joel's out there regularly driving nails and putting in screws. I reminded him he can't drive screws. He can't use his hammer for that. So, be having a full report in May for our last year and a little bit of this year, but things are really going along well in expansion and programming. One thing that's going to happen in the Conservation District soon, I think it's in June or July, I can't remember the date, but they're doing a program on forest bathing. So this is a program that's actually developed in Japan. You do keep your clothes on, but this is a woman out of Grand Rapids that they're partnering with, and I've looked at that for parks as well. But it's how to walk into the woods. You know, it's not a hike. It's basically enjoying the woods and using your 5 senses as you go into the woods and understanding nature as it is. So a very attractive opportunity for a lot of our people and so on. I'll switch hats and talk about the Planning Commission real quickly. We're very close to getting the 5-year plan finished. We've been working with Stephen Carlson from Wimserdick and talking about responses. We've only had 90 responses to our survey, which we tried to get out to many different places. Last summer at the county fair, I was there for 2 days trying to get people to sign up for our QR code. That really fell on deaf ears because a lot of people at the county fair, for whatever reason, don't have a smartphone that accepts a QR code. And I found quite a number of them didn't even have a cell phone that were walking through there. So they did take the survey manually, which was cumbersome for a lot of people. But the fact is, it's hard to reach those people and get their attention while they're walking through a fair. It was worth a shot. I think the county needs to have a presence there in the kind of the commercial barn, I guess, Paul, would that be right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Ed building.
So, yeah, that's right. So that's a few updates. Appreciate your time. Thanks for the conversation today.
Great. Thank you. Any other department head? Very good. Public comment. Any public comment?
I'll public comment one thing.
All right. Marvelous.
Discussion earlier today had a discussion regarding deputies driving from Hart potentially to Hesperia. And I found in the business life that I've been in over the years that there is a cost of doing business. Now, not everything that we can do is a profitable center. We can't particularly charge X for something, but sometimes you just have to more or less, I won't say bite the bullet, but sometimes you have to bite the bullet and just kind of do it. And I think that would be an opportunity to really consider things like that. We can't always go forward with everything we want on a profitability scale. Sometimes we have to give a little. So, Gary McKean
247 South 56th Avenue, Mears, Michigan. My wife is Julie.
Blood type?
Any other public comment?
I got one.
All right, yeah.
If you notice, John Kavanaugh is not here today. Unfortunately, he had other plans, but I'd also like to say that the paper is no longer has Amanda working for them anymore, so what we may experience here in the future is less news weekly available for our constituents. Unfortunately, Amanda will be looking for another career, and at this point in time, I don't think that the paper's made any progress with that. But if you look at the front page as to what Amanda has done and John has done, and John had told me that he'll be speaking with Tracy so that we might be able to have something in the newspaper next week.
All right. Very good, thank you. Last call for public comment. With that, we will adjourn and take a 10-minute recess before we reconvene for a regular meeting.
You didn't see it?
We're gonna need it pretty soon.
No problem.
Yeah, no problem. And can I just read? Thank you.
Submarine Museum in Muskegon gives you radios